The desert range shimmered under the late afternoon sun. Heat waves rose from the sand, bending the horizon into a wavering illusion. Targets stood nearly a mile out, small steel silhouettes barely visible to the naked eye. Wind moved unpredictably, sharp and restless, kicking dust into the air. A group of elite operators lay prone behind high-caliber rifles. Among them were members of an advanced unit, men known for precision, discipline, and years of hardened experience. Today's exercise wasn't routine. It was a joint evaluation. Observers, instructors, and ranking officers stood behind the firing line, watching carefully. Then it happened. A single shot cracked through the air. Not rushed, not forced, clean. Several heads snapped up immediately. The steel target in the distance rang half a second later, sharp and undeniable. A direct center hit. One of the operators lowered his binoculars slowly. "No way," he muttered. Another checked the wind gauge again. The crosswind had shifted just moments before the shot. Adjusting for that in time required either luck or exceptional skill. "Who took that shot?" a deep voice demanded. The question cut through the range like a blade. He stood up slowly, the Navy SEAL team leader. His presence carried authority. Years of operational experience showed in his posture, in the way others instinctively gave him space. He scanned the firing line carefully. Silence answered him. No one spoke. No one moved. The shot had come from the far end of the formation, slightly separated from the main cluster. A lone figure lay steady behind a long rifle, still looking through the scope as if nothing unusual had happened. Dust swirled lightly around her boots. She adjusted her breathing, calm and controlled. The SEAL stepped closer, boots crunching on gravel. "I asked," he repeated firmly, "who took that shot?" Several of the men glanced sideways toward the lone shooter but quickly looked away. Some weren't sure, others were certain, but hesitant. The range officer checked his tablet. The system had logged the shot, distance, angle, environmental correction. It was nearly flawless. Even under ideal conditions, the probability of that clean center hit was low. Under shifting wind, almost impossible. The SEAL stopped a few feet behind her. "You," he said. She slowly lifted her head from the rifle stock and removed her eye from the scope. Calm eyes met his. No arrogance, no challenge, just quiet confidence. "Yes, sir." "You fired." "Yes." He looked back toward the distant steel silhouette. Wind shifted 2 degrees east 3 seconds before impact. "Yes, sir." "And you compensated." "Yes, sir." There was no hesitation in her answers. Some of the operators shifted uncomfortably. A few exchanged looks. She had been quiet all morning. Focused. Observing. She hadn't spoken much during briefing. No one had paid her much attention. Now they were. The SEAL crouched beside her rifle, studying it. It wasn't flashy. It wasn't customized beyond regulation standards. No excessive modifications. Just a clean, well-maintained precision rifle. "Call it," he said. "What was your hold?" She answered immediately, listing the elevation adjustment, wind correction, and slight compensation for temperature density. Her calculations matched almost perfectly with the system's recorded data. One of the instructors whispered under his breath, impressed. The SEAL stood slowly. "Again," he said. She didn't argue, didn't nod dramatically. She simply repositioned, settled behind the rifle, and inhaled slowly. The wind shifted again, lighter this time. She waited. Seconds passed. The range was silent except for the distant hum of air moving across sand. Then, crack, the second target rang out. Dead center. This time, no one questioned it. A murmur moved across the observers. Even seasoned operators couldn't hide the surprise on their faces. Precision like that wasn't common, even among elite units. The SEAL removed his sunglasses, studying her carefully now, not dismissively, not skeptically. "Evaluating. You've done this before," he said. She lifted herself from prone position and finally stood, dust brushing lightly from her uniform. "Yes, sir." "How long?" A pause. The air felt heavier now. "Long enough," she replied calmly. The SEAL narrowed his eyes slightly, not in anger, but in recognition. This wasn't luck. It wasn't beginner's talent. It was experience. Deep experience. Around them, respect began to shift quietly. The earlier indifference was gone. The doubt had evaporated. The steel targets in the distance swayed slightly from the impact of 2 perfect shots. The SEAL crossed his arms. "Tomorrow," he said firmly, "we run advanced distance drills." He held her gaze for a moment longer. And I want you on lead. A subtle reaction moved through the line. Lead position was earned, not assigned casually. She nodded once. Yes, sir. But as she turned back toward the range, something about her composure suggested this was only the beginning. And somewhere behind the SEAL's steady expression, a new question had formed. Not just who took the shot, but who, exactly, was she? The sun had dropped lower, casting long shadows across the range. What had started as a routine evaluation had quietly transformed into something else, something heavier. The air no longer carried doubt. It carried curiosity. The team regrouped near the equipment benches. Rifles were cleared, magazines removed, chambers checked. Yet the conversation, usually filled with technical corrections and light banter, was subdued. Every few seconds, someone glanced in her direction. She stood slightly apart, methodically cleaning her rifle. Each movement was efficient, practiced, not rushed, not showy, just precise. The Navy SEAL team leader approached again, this time without the earlier edge in his voice. You ever operate in mountain wind? He asked casually. She didn't look up immediately. Yes, sir. High altitude. Yes, sir. Urban overwatch. A slight pause. Yes, sir. He studied her more closely now. Her uniform bore standard patches for the current exercise unit. Nothing extraordinary. No visible decorations beyond what was expected. Yet her skill told a different story. One of the senior operators leaned closer to the SEAL and murmured quietly, "She's not new." No, he replied. She's not. The range officer walked over with the shot log tablet. Sir, those corrections, they weren't reactive. They were predictive. The SEAL nodded slowly. He already knew. He turned back to her. Where'd you train? She finally looked up, locking eyes with him calmly. Multiple assignments, sir. That's not an answer. A few nearby operators stiffened slightly. The tone wasn't hostile, but it was probing. She stood up fully now, slinging her rifle over her shoulder. With respect, sir, she said evenly, my record should be in your briefing file. There it was. Not arrogance, not defiance, just fact. The SEAL's jaw tightened slightly. He hadn't personally reviewed every attached personnel file for this joint training rotation. He had trusted the standard intake process. But now something felt incomplete. Bring me her file, he told the range officer. Minutes later, they gathered inside the temporary command tent. Maps lined the folding tables. Laptops hummed softly. Outside, the wind brushed against the canvas walls. The file appeared on screen. Name, service branch, clearance level. The SEAL's expression changed. Not dramatically, but enough. He scrolled further. Advanced sniper certification. Long-range reconnaissance. Deployments. Joint Task Force leadership. Leadership. He leaned back slowly. The others in the tent watched carefully. That can't be right, one muttered quietly. But it was. Her clearance level exceeded most of the room. The SEAL exhaled once, steady and controlled. She wasn't here to be evaluated, he said quietly. She was here to evaluate. Silence filled the tent. Outside, she remained by the range, speaking quietly with one of the junior operators, explaining wind drift in simple, practical terms. No ego, no superiority, just instruction. Back inside, the SEAL closed the file. She outperformed half the field today, one instructor said. Not half, the SEAL corrected. All. Another pause. Why didn't command say anything? Someone asked. The SEAL gave a faint, knowing look. Because they wanted real results. Not salutes. He stepped out of the tent. The wind caught his uniform as he walked back toward her. This time, the operators parted slightly, not out of habit, but out of respect. She noticed him approaching and stood straighter. Ma'am, he said. The word carried differently. Several heads turned instantly. She didn't react visibly, but there was recognition in her eyes. I wasn't informed of your oversight position, he continued. It wasn't necessary, she replied calmly. He nodded once. Understood. A few of the operators exchanged glances. The shift was undeniable now. The dynamic had changed. One of the younger men, the same one who had earlier questioned her shot under his breath, stepped forward hesitantly. Ma'am, were you running external recon units before this? She studied him for a moment, not judging, just assessing. Yes. How many deployments? Enough to know wind doesn't care about confidence, she answered. A few quiet chuckles followed, but they weren't mocking. They were impressed. The SEAL crossed his arms, looking out toward the distant steel targets. Tomorrow, he said firmly, we extend distance to maximum. She nodded once. And, he added carefully, you'll brief the team. Another shift in the air. Briefing meant authority. She accepted without hesitation. Yes, sir. But before he could step away, she added quietly, I don't need special treatment. He looked. The wind moved slowly across the desert base, carrying sand and silence in equal measure. The tension from moments ago still lingered in the air. Every soldier stood frozen, their eyes shifting between the Navy SEAL who had asked the question and the quiet female sniper standing a few feet away. Who took that shot? The SEAL had demanded earlier, his voice sharp and commanding. Now everyone knew, but they didn't understand. She stood calm, her rifle still slung across her shoulder, her expression unreadable. Dust clung to her uniform, blending her into the battlefield like she belonged to it more than anyone else there. She had stepped forward without hesitation. I did, she had said simply. At first, there were murmurs. Some disbelief, some irritation. One soldier even muttered that it was impossible, the distance had been too far, the wind too strong. Then the commander arrived. The base fell into immediate order when Commander Hayes walked into the open yard. His boots struck the ground with authority. His sharp eyes scanned the group before resting on her. For a second, just 1 second, something changed in his expression. Recognition. He stepped closer. The Navy SEAL straightened. Sir, we were just confirming who. But before he could finish, something unexpected happened. Commander Hayes stopped directly in front of the female sniper. And saluted. Not casually, not lightly. A full, sharp military salute. The sound of boots snapping together echoed as every soldier instinctively followed his lead, confusion written across their faces. Welcome back, Admiral Carter, the commander said firmly. The world seemed to pause. Admiral, the SEAL's eyes widened. Someone behind him whispered, Admiral. She lowered her gaze for a moment before returning the salute with calm precision. There was no pride in her expression. No need to prove anything. Just quiet authority. I didn't expect to make an entrance, she replied, her voice steady. The Navy SEAL took a small step back. His earlier tone, his doubt, it now echoed loudly in his own mind. He had questioned her, challenged her, and she had outranked them all. Admiral Carter slowly removed her gloves. The small scar along her wrist caught the sunlight, a reminder of battles long before this one. She looked around at the soldiers gathered there. I requested to observe this operation without formal introduction, she explained. I needed to see the field as it truly was. The commander nodded respectfully. And what did you see, ma'am? Her eyes shifted toward the horizon where the earlier shot had been fired. I saw hesitation, she said quietly. And I saw potential. The words hit harder than any reprimand. The SEAL swallowed, stepping forward. Ma'am, that shot, it was over 900 meters. With crosswind. She met his eyes. There was no anger in hers. Only calm certainty. You hesitated because you calculated the risk, she said. That's not weakness. But sometimes leadership means taking the shot when others won't. Silence returned, but it felt different now. Respectful, heavy. The younger soldiers looked at her differently. Not as the quiet sniper who kept to herself. Not as someone they underestimated. But as a leader who had chosen humility over recognition. The commander turned to address the unit. Let this be a lesson, he said firmly. Rank doesn't always announce itself. And skill doesn't always demand attention. Admiral Carter adjusted the strap of her rifle. I didn't come here for ceremony, she added. I came to remind this unit what precision, trust, and confidence look like. Her eyes rested briefly on the Navy SEAL. And to remind you that assumptions are the most dangerous enemy on any battlefield. The wind picked up again, brushing past the flags at the edge of the base. The SEAL straightened and saluted her properly this time. Permission to train under your command, ma'am. A faint smile touched her lips, barely visible, but real. Permission granted. As the formation broke and soldiers returned to position, the story had already begun spreading across the base. Not about the shot, not about the distance, but about the moment a quiet sniper revealed she was an admiral, and reminded everyone that true power doesn't need to announce itself. And from that day forward, whenever someone asked, who took that shot? The answer carried far more weight than before.